Hey folks, thanks for dropping in. This interview with Alex Farling is a great conversation. Alex is currently CEO of Lifecycle Insights. The conversation though is based on his sales experience in his MSP days. He was president for an MSP, owned an MSP for 16 years. And unlike many MSP presidents, he came from a sales background. So in this interview, he shares some of his learnings, and I thought it was a great, there's a lot of good insights in there. So definitely check it out. Thanks. Bye. Well, Alex, thanks so much for taking some time. I know you have a lot going on right now, but for the folks who haven't met you yet, who don't know about you and your business, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about why you're here today.
Yeah, so my name is Alex Farling. I'm one of the co-founders of Lifecycle Insights. I owned an MSP for 16 and a half years, so I've definitely lived the life, played the game that all these guys are working so hard to win at. And before that, I really was just a lifelong sales professional. I'm kind of that guy who is a little unique in the MSP space, and that IT was an interest. It's fun, it's cool, but I was never the smartest guy in the room. I was the sales guy who could go out and close the deal and bring the stuff back to the really bright guys, as opposed to a lot of these MSP owners who are just the quintessential engineer, who are just fantastic technical folks and maybe struggle a little bit on the sales side.
Absolutely, and it's I think there's so much to like the technical and like how that stuff applies. It could be applied so well to selling. So and the fact that you know so much about that, I think is going to make this interview really interesting. And what are you doing today? I know we're going to ask a little bit more on that at the end, but where are you now? What are you doing now?
Yeah, so in the process of owning an MSP, I kind of figured out that sales and account management tools in the space were mediocre at best. So we built Lifecycle Insights, and I'm helping drive that platform today. Really just helping the space with training, education, vendor relationships, and having conversations like these to make sure people are realizing that there's a better way than the manual way that we do everything in sales and account management today. So we built a platform over at Lifecycle Insights to help with that. And my mission today is just to share that with as many people as possible so that we can make their lives easier.
Fantastic. We're going to want to hear more about that, but we'll so if you're listening to this interview, you want to get right to Lifecycle Insights. Alex will share a little bit more on that on the end of this interview. But let's get to your journey, which is our little second little bullet point here.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about like how how you started off in sales in that's the spirit of this interview, right? Like tell us a little bit about how you're doing it in the beginning.
Well, I had done sales a ton before my MSP. I had worked for some big boys, Ford, Verizon, Radio Shack, companies that had real sales processes, real sales training. So walking into the MSP space, sales was something I was comfortable with. It definitely didn't make me uncomfortable, like so many other folks talk about. So having a knack for it, early on, I was just flying by the seat of my pants. I knew I could go in, I could talk to people, I could help them uncover pain. I could present them solutions for it, and I could close a good number of deals. So that's where it kind of started. Over the years, I got exposed to better processes and better sales tools in the space. None of them were really good. They were all very manual, but there's a lot of guys out there like Alex Rogers over at Chartech. Brilliant dude. Knows a lot about sales. Chartech has a very good sales process. I worked some of that into my process and further refined it. Along the way, I hired an account manager who wasn't real good at sales, so we hired a Sandler trainer to teach him, and we worked a little bit of Sandler into my process. And over the years, like it's just something that's evolved as we went. And I think that's super important, is to just make sure that your sales process is something that you're continuing to work on and fine tune over time. But that's really what has helped me go from presenting without tools to building a tool that helps MSPs present and sell and have more data at their fingertips to help executives make good decisions.
Yeah. And it sounds like, as you said, like even before your MSP, like you had Radio Shacks and like maybe some other big companies that had processes that. And what were some of but you were flying by the seat of your pants at the beginning, maybe because it was just new for you. But what was it like? So like let's say in your early days, in your early MSP,
days, when you were having like a first meeting with the prospect, maybe they were introduced to you from a friend or from an existing client, but like, what was your plan, if any, going into this first meeting in your earlier?
Early on there was way less plan, but we would go out and sit down in front of the server and poke through the network and figure out what was there and throw a price at them, and hopefully they were going to close and we were going to be able to do business with them. We talked about a little bit of what hurt. We tried to go find the technology behind what hurt and say, yeah, I can put my finger on it so I can fix it, and throw a price out and get a deal closed. That I think that's kind of where everybody starts.
Right.
I think maybe we were a little more pain focused than most, but we were probably not far off from your average MSP when it comes to where our sales process started.
Okay, and what do you remember a particular opportunity that just totally, like, you blew it, and where you had like a moment where you're like, there's something wrong here?
I will tell you,
yeah,
I can remember a couple where I blew it, and they all go back to the same thing. I didn't follow my own damn process. And it seems like every time you deviate from a working, known, good sales process, and I blew it on more of them after I had a sales process, or maybe I was just more aware of it than before. Because, and I can think of one specifically, it was a small housing management company, and they sat with us, so they let us do our discovery. We did all the process. We had our sales process at this point. And I was busy. I didn't make a lot of time for them. So I emailed them the quote. And I never heard back from them. And I went into that chase mode where it's like, hey, did you look at my paperwork? Okay, I'll just leave you a voicemail, whatever, click, And for 2-3 weeks, I chased them and then really just never heard anything back from them. And I know what happened. I didn't go back and present value to them. I didn't go back and sit down and talk to the decision makers. I shortcutted it. I emailed it in, and I got the result you should expect when you don't follow your own process. So I will say the majority of my big blunders and big failures were for getting eager and taking on too much, being too busy to follow my own process.
I find that in so many cases with MSP presidents who I talk, that you guys are pulled in so many different directions. Like you're managing so much. And was that how it was? Or like were you just like, it sounds like, I'm sure you weren't intentionally blowing your process. It was like,
no, but
it's like a lot going on. Like
these guys don't become MSP owners. I didn't become an MSP owner because I didn't want to take on a lot. And these guys take on a ton, and you're right. They're wearing too many hats. They're too, in my case, I was too ADHD and, just focused on everything but the right things sometimes. And staying focused was really a challenge for me sometimes. But the point of it all is sales isn't really that much different from technical in that there should be a process. It should be a defined process. And if you follow it, you should get better outcomes. That's true for working help desk tickets. It's true for high-level engineering projects, and it's true for sales. So I like to kind of have that conversation with MSPs who think they're struggling, and let them just pick it apart and take all the fear out of it and say, it's really not that much different than what you do every day anyway.
And I have to say, for anyone listening to what Alex just said, the reason I keep in touch and it, I'm invited Alex is because he met with one of my MSP clients, and this guy we were generating good meetings, potential opportunities for him, and then they met with Alex, and now we have they've closed many clients. So I want to dive a little deeper for the listeners today. How does that process that you're describing look like? The first step, can you give us a little bit of insight into that? What's the thing you do? Yeah.
So we broke out a very specific 5-step sales process at my MSP. And I've talked about it with some other folks. You can make a 4-step process, you can make a 6-step process, whatever, but you ought to have some sort of a sales funnel, kind of built out. And what ours was pretty straightforward. It was that first, are we a good fit call? Probably not a face-to-face unless they walked in your office and you got to shake their hand, but it's hey, who are you? What are your pains? What's the size of your network? Where are you at? Have you thought about budget for IT? We may not be digging into those details yet, but just me kind of questioning them, going, are you the kind of customer that I want? And Nigel over at Tech Tribe does a great job of spelling out what the right fit call ought to look like. But it's checking a bunch of boxes to say, this is the kind of people I want to work with. From there, we go to an on-site meeting or some sort of a face-to-face where we get to learn about where their pains are, what hurts, actually talk to the people and dissect the human side. That's always our second step. Our third step was a technical discovery. So engineer goes out, runs a scan on the network, discovers what's out there. Step 4 was always a follow-up call, right? We've got the people information, we've got the technical information, we compare the two, we come up with a plan. Before we present, we go back to the customer, remind them of what the pain was, try and get a budget out of them at that point, make sure that what we're going to present is within their budget and is really going to land with them. Like set the seed for the budget in stage 2, but in stage 4, we're confirming it and saying, hey, Mr. Customer, I know we talked about somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 a month in revenue. If I come back to you inside that range, can we still do business together? We're doing some Sandler bracketing techniques there to make sure that the customer's still bought in. And then we go make a final presentation once we've kind of confirmed with the customer that we're on the same page and that they're going to have all the decision makers in the room and those kind of things, which is kind of the purpose of that 4th call. And then the 5th one is just that final presentation. Go sit down with the customer, get ink on paper, and close the deal.
Yeah, that sounds. It sounds very. I mean, when I hear it, it's like, yes, that makes perfect sense.
It only took 16 years to figure it out.
Yeah, this guy's like, this is so simple, right? Like,
yeah,
like you do this and do that. It's hard for me to say where things can go wrong. But if we were to if we were listening to that first call, that first one over the phone that you said, unless they happen to walk into your office, what sorts of questions or even before the questions, like what sort of research or what do you try to understand about the prospect before you even talk to them?
Well, I'm always looking for a couple of things. Are they the kind of customer I want to work with? So I'll ask them questions like, so you're telling me about all these things that hurt, all of these problems you have with your IT or with your network or whatever. Have you addressed them with your current IT guy? And I always push back and go, why'd you call me? Why aren't you going and talking to your other IT guy? And if the answer is, really, really negative, it kind of tells me that's the way they're going to treat me and my team if we have them as a customer. If they're not willing to go tell the IT guy, hey, this isn't working out, then are they really the kind of client that you want? So I think there's some opportunities here to just decide, do they have the funding? Do they have the budget? Do they have the personality to work with me? Is this the kind of people that are really going to be a right fit for my business? We're asking some questions about how big is the network? How many people do you have? Where's your email hosted? And, usually I know the answer to where's your email hosted before I even ask the question, because while I'm talking to them on the phone, I'm over here, looking it up on the internet, making sure that I know who I'm talking to. But, we want to know these things just to know that this is the kind of customer who's a cultural fit for my company, because nothing's worse than going out and closing a big deal, coming back all excited, dropping that deal on your engineer's desk, and then them going out to the client and their first experience being, my God, this guy's terrible. I don't ever want to go back there. And it happens to every MSP, right? Everybody's had that bad customer. We had a debt collector that was just, he was a jerk on the phone to everybody who he called to try and collect money from, and that flowed right over into every conversation he had with my team. And it was just a bad relationship from the door. So that right fit call is both, do they have the right technology? Could we get them to the right technology where they're supportable? And are they the kind of human beings that we want to have a relationship with?
And it sounds like, based on your question, these were probably like inbound leads or people who had reached out to you. Is that always?
Well, yeah. I mean, just like every other MSP, I didn't do any marketing.
Right.
Come on, you know this. You're the marketing guy. We didn't do any marketing. All of our business was either walk-ins, leads, or referrals. We were really good at getting referrals at our MSP. We had some great vendor partners that sent us a lot of business. I think that is an underappreciated space in the vendor relationship space. Sophos was a great partner for us. They sent us a ton of leads, but every one of those, just because Sophos sent them to you, doesn't mean you know enough about them to know that they're a good fit. So we would still kind of interview them after the fact.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what kind of changed, at least because now, like, I'm working with MSPs, and we are proactively going after prospects. Yeah. MSPs, and when a prospect kind of agrees to a meeting, presumably they have a pain. My team, we try to uncover what that might be during like a cold call. But sometimes, Alex, like my team, we don't get super far.
Right.
In discovery during a 2 or 3 minute cold call.
Well, and you can't, part of that sales process, and probably the best thing I ever learned from listening to Alex Rogers at Chartech was
Mhm.
you need to talk to multiple people in that company to figure out
Mm.
what's really going on. I need to go sit with the bookkeeper to learn what her pains are because they're different from the front desk receptionist and the outside salesperson. And
Mm.
so as a cold caller, you're never going to get to talk to that many people. You're never really going to get to the bottom of it. You're just going to go, hey, I poked a little and they told me it hurt where I poked. So it's up to the salesperson from that point to dive deeper into that prospect and help them figure out, number one, is the pain, is it really a technical pain or is it people process something else? And
Mm.
it's something that we can fix. And if you can dig into that, figure out how to correct their technology to fix it, you wind up looking a whole lot better than just if you're the guy who comes in and says, I counted 10 workstations, that'll be $1,750 a month. Here's the quote.
Right, right, yeah. And speaking of money and quotes, like how did you handle sort of, or how do you, or how did you, as you refine your process, handle like those questions, or whether they came up like in that first call? How did you sort of respond when someone was like, all right, how much is this? How much is this going to cost?
Right.
Handle
Well,
those.
it's very easy to duck that stuff in the first call. It's really hard to duck that stuff by the third or fourth call. But
Mhm.
in that first call, we were always trying to kind of wrap our head around where the customer was at. So, like every other MSP, we're asking how many seats do you have? How many users? Do you have any complex proprietary software? And I'm running some mental numbers in my head. Um,
Mhm.
we tried to sell at $150 a seat at my MSP, so I'm quoting them ballpark, $150 to $200 a seat, knowing that that gives me some room for complexity, whatever. Um, and then I would simply ask, hey, Mr. Customer, if I came back to you with a number that said, or I've worked with other people in your position, and it's cost them $2,000 to $4,000 a month to solve the kind of problems that you have. If I come
Mhm.
back to you with that kind of a number, are we in the right ballpark, or are you going to throw me out of your office? And I would always use that little self-deprecating humor, like, can we still be friends after I give you this number? Um, but that fits me. That fits my personality. I can say that with a straight face and a little wink and a nod to the customer, and they laugh at it and they give me an answer. But it's funny because I actually had a guy who worked for me who would try and use that same language, and it wasn't authentic to him, and
Mhm.
bombed every time. And he actually said to me at one point, he says, I feel like you're using Jedi mind tricks on our prospects because the exact same thing I can ask and get a way different result. And the
Yeah.
takeaway from that is pretty stark and pretty simple. Everybody's different. You can't go read a Sandler book or go sit in an Alex Rogers seminar and come home and be a salesperson.
Mm.
You've got to have a process that you build, that you improve on over time, that is kind of an iterative improvement thing
Mm.
where you're taking things that you've learned from other people, but making them your own, making them personal, making them better. Um, but I've taken a little from each person that I've come across in the process over time and pulled it into my solution, into my deliverable, to say it in my way that is authentic and comes from words that don't feel slimy when they come out of my mouth. Everybody says I don't want to be a salesperson because it makes me feel gross.
Mm.
Doing sales and it makes you feel gross, you're doing it wrong.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
you should be able to sell through education, sell through consultation. Words are hard. Um, you should be able to sell with education and do it without feeling gross, feeling like you're really delivering a solution to a customer. And you do that by being authentic, by really digging in to find their problem and showing them solutions to problems, not just throwing the stack at them and assuming and hoping that it'll solve for everything that they've got.
Absolutely, yeah. They need to understand the value. You need to, as you said, educate them. And what do you think the biggest gap in education was for maybe it's and I asked that because in many cases now the companies that we're simple selling and that we're reaching out to on behalf of our MSPs, they're already working with another provider, whether it's a break and fix or even sometimes an MSP. So I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on like what were the gaps that you found most common back in the day when you had your MSP, and what do you think maybe the how that might be different in the sales process for today at the maturity of like the MSP industry and with
Well, I
SMB.
think the industry as a whole has changed, right? When I started my managed service business, so we started as a break fix shop. We converted to managed services in 2008. I was the only people in my town that knew what the words managed services meant at that point.
Mm.
Now, more and more MSPs walk in somewhere where there is an incumbent managed service provider. The words are not strange to their client. The concept of a subscription service as opposed to paying hourly is not new and different to their customer. So I think the education's different. It's not that the education doesn't need to exist, but instead of educating them on what managed services is, we can educate them on the need for cybersecurity, the need for risk management, the need for some of these other things that, as the industry has evolved, have become different and more important than just making sure they understand what a subscription service really is, because that's pretty commonplace today.
Yep. No, that's definitely something that comes up really early in our interactions with prospects is, questions on security. So that definitely opens a lot of doors, and there's a huge opportunity there, I think, for education there. Like sort of my last question before, second to last one, because I want our listeners to hear more about what you're working on today. But on the different stages, the 5 or 6 steps that you described, which stage do you think is the one that you iterated the most on when you had your MSP, and why is that? What was the hardest one, you think, for?
It's the one that we improved the most was that 4th step, which in our process was, we've been introduced, we've collected the human information, we've collected the data, and then we've got to build that, the proposal to the customer, and then have the call where we softball the proposal. And I think a lot of MSPs skip this step. To us, it was super valuable. We would pick up the phone with the customer and just say, hey, I want to make sure we're still on the same page. You and I talked a week ago. You told me about this. Sally in accounting told me about this problem. Jill at the front desk told me about this problem. I've learned a lot from talking to your team, and here's kind of a summary of what I was hearing. Does this sound right to you? And if they say, no, I don't believe any of that's right, you're not ready to close that customer. Not how I understand it. You're not ready to close that customer. So putting in that extra step that says, are we on the same page? Has what I collected lined up nicely to the pain that you feel? Lets me walk into that closing step knowing how I'm going to present my solution to their pain. If I present a solution to pain that the owner and the decision maker don't believe exists after having talked to their team, there's a bigger problem there that we need to get to the bottom of. And it means that, number one, I'm either going to totally fall flat on my face when I go to close that deal, or number two, I'm going to need to rearrange how I close that deal, maybe bring some of these other people with their problems into the room to let the owner hear it themselves, and kind of get them all on the same page before we take the next steps into closing that deal. So I think the big one to me is knowing exactly what you're trying to solve for when you go to close, and that the problem I'm trying to solve is the problem that you really, really think you have. I might know technically what your problem is, but that doesn't mean you understand it. That doesn't mean that you see the value in the fix that I'm going to propose. And being the tech guy, of course, and I'm the smartest guy in the room, I understand how all the widgets and knobs and all the stuff under the hood in the network works. I know where the problem is. Doesn't mean that the customer feels the same problem that I can see. So that last call is really important to say, am I on point with what I'm going to present? And am I on budget with what I'm going to present? So I know that when I get the decision makers in the room, I can make the right presentation, slide the paperwork across the desk, and get a signature. Because if you can do that, you can skip that whole, we got to go talk to 3 other people, we got to get quotes, and you can skip getting dropped into chase mode. If you can really do this right.
Oh, that's great. That's such it's like a small thing, but it makes so much sense that you kind of know that you're moving in the right.
It's a small thing, and yet it's so big.
So big.
Out there on the radio that has an ad that says it's 65% of salespeople or whatever his number is give up after the 3rd attempt or whatever. Well, why is there a 3rd attempt? Because you screwed up the first one.
Right.
And that's the point that I think gets missed on a lot of folks. If you manage the sales process, if you walk the customer through it, if you lead them through it as opposed to follow them through it, you'll get more closes. But that includes, sticking to your process, making the 3 or 4 or 5 contacts that you think you need to have, and doing the same thing over again. Because if you do it the same way multiple times, then you can step back, you can pick it apart, and you can say, hey, where did that one fall down? Oh, well, it's because I didn't follow my process. I emailed the quote. Where did this one fall down? Oh, I didn't get a budget before I went. Or where did this one fall down? The customer and I weren't really on the same page. There was something that was missing there because they threw me a curveball in the 5th meeting, and I should have seen it coming. So if you can really openly and honestly dissect and tear apart every sales call, and improve your process, you're in a better place. But you can only do that if you lead, because otherwise the customer will lead you off your process and you won't have done it the same way multiple times to really pick it apart.
Really, really good feedback. Thank you, Alex. That's great. Yeah, I wanna just end on Lifecycle insight. I want to hear more about that. Yeah.
So living in my MSP, I had a sign over my desk that said, if you have to do it twice, automate it. And every time I would go give a quarterly business review or go do a sales presentation, I was starting from zero. I was manually building reports, trying to have some sort of content to lay out in front of my customer or my prospect. And the end result was not something I was proud of. The work just wasn't, it wasn't consistent. I wasn't able to really deliver the same thing the same way over and over. And it just didn't work. So I came up with the idea that we needed to use some of the data we already had in the VCIO and account management process. You have, at my MSP, we had Connect Buys, we had IT Glue, we had Automate and Manage. We had some data coming in from Warranty Master. We had data all over the place. And we were using very, very little of it. And what of it we used, we manually printed a report and slid it into a binder and tried to make it cohesive with a bunch of reports that came out of different platforms. And to me, that was a problem. So what we did was we built a platform that relies on the data you already have. It uses APIs and plugins. It goes out and talks to your PSA or to your documentation system. It goes out and talks to Office 365 and Dell, HP, and Lenovo to do warranty lookups and all that. And we take the data you have, we procure it, we clean it up a little bit, and we give it back to you in a presentation-friendly format. It's not nerdy. We never talk about we're replacing a PC because it's got not enough GBs, and the HD is too small, right? We're presenting that to the customer that we have a lifecycle management policy and process. We follow the policy and process, and we wind up in a better place. We present everything red, yellow, green, and keep it really simple. I like to say, a third grader can read a stoplight. So we present stoplight reports so that a C-level executive can understand. These guys, they hire an MSP because they don't understand technology. And we come try and sales pitch them with a bunch of tech jargon.
Yeah. So what sort of results could an MSP who implements or someone using your tool?
Well, to some extent, yeah. In full transparency, to some extent, you get out of it what you put into it. And every vendor will come out and make you the promise that if you take on this tool, it'll pay for itself. If you take on that tool, it'll replace an employee in your building. Most of those are BS. In reality, you get out of it what you put into it. The folks who are really using the platform the way that it was designed and who are really putting forth the effort, we hear about six-figure deal closes all the time. Hey, I closed a six-figure project with an existing customer. We had a guy who had a customer who's charging $3,000 a month. He went out in and made a presentation with our platform and bumped them to $6,500 a month on a 3-year contract. Those are guys who, every platform can brag about a rock star like that, but the reality is we're making a repeatable process where people can do that over and over. And when a guy walks out of the room with that type of a result, and they know all they have to do is go back and run the same process across their other 49 clients. What we're finding is that most MSPs have 25 to 35% of their revenue left on the table that they're not even charging their clients. That they could go get 25 to 35% more business out of their existing client base, and they can use the tool for pre-sales and sales presentations and use it with new clients as they come on to make sure that they get max revenue out of them. But really, it's about having consistency across your client base, making sure all your clients subscribe to as many of your products and services as possible, and just have repeatable, definable outcomes so that they have positive experiences and you make money.
That's awesome. I think we all want to make money. So that sounds good to me. And for everyone, Alex, your website so they can learn more and sign up and all that.
Yeah, lifecycleinsights.io. There's a contact link there. There's a free trial link there. There's website chat. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. And, if you don't hit the website, you can find us on just about every social media platform out there. We try to be where our clients and prospects are. So if you see a guy named Alex Farling out in a Slack channel somewhere or a Discord channel where the IT guys hang out, it's probably me.
Awesome, Alex. Hey, thank you so much. This was I enjoyed the conversation very much.
Absolutely, Derek. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. All right. Take care. All right.
Yep.